Welcome, Chris, to our episode of it's basically about productive woodlands. I don't know if you've noticed, but Tilhill have been trying to promote productive woodlands and everything that we're doing. And part of that is the checks and measures for harvesting and how important they are. We heard that you're the best person to answer the questions today. Please start by telling us firstly what your job role is and what you do, and then we'll go on to talk a bit about the checks and measures involved.
Okay. I'm the Senior Wildlife Manager here at Central Borders. I've worked for Tilhill for the last 25 years, and my job title at the moment is all-encompassing, all matters pertaining to wildlife on a day-to-day basis, and yeah, I'm quite heavily involved in species protection pre-harvesting.
Fantastic, thank you. So can you give us a rundown of what are the checks and measures involved on a harvesting site before harvesting takes place?
Okay, I just want to qualify what I'm saying first by saying these are the methods that I implement, and I imagine that most other people do similar sort of thing. Well, first of all, it starts basically behind your desk, because you got to kind of consider where in the country you live, what you're likely to find. So what are the constraints going to be? So generally speaking, I'll look up the NBN Atlas and see if there are any notable records in the area that I'm going to be working in. I might look up the SOC Bird Atlas if it's the time of year for breeding birds, and see if there are any rarities in the area. And once I've got a kind of background idea, that informs my decision-making process when it comes to going and doing the actual search. You know, by and large in this area, depending on the time of year, the biggest issues for us are breeding birds, roosting bats, badgers of course, and red squirrels. So when I go to the forest, I've generally got a rough idea that what I might find there, and tailor my search accordingly. I'll just give you a run through. You know, as I said, you do your desk-based search, and then basically we hit the forest. We use a standard recording format. It's an ecological record. This is sort of like the primary record, so to speak. So we hit the forest for a walk-through search. It's not really a survey, it's a bit more general than that. And depending on what we know before we start, that'll sort of gauge what sort of level we have to set it at. So for example, if it were a forest that I knew there were red squirrels present, and it was a forest that facilitated seeing the drays, so we're not talking about thicket stage Sitka spruce at the top of the hill, but perhaps a thinned crop or something like that, then I might have to consider doing the search on 25-metre transects, i.e. the transects based on 25-metre centres, so that I can find all the squirrel drays and mark them up so they can be protected. Conversely, if it was the top of the hill and we're in the middle of the Sitka spruce and we can't see anything and we're on deep peat and there's not much happening, then yeah, the transects could be as far apart as 70 to 100 metres. It just depends on what we think the actual constraints or issues are.
What is a transect?
A transect, okay, well then, basically we take our compartment and we divide it up into equidistant lines, generally using Avenza and GPS technology, so I can see how far apart my lines are. And I attempt to walk through the crop in straight lines so that I can observe everything either side of me and write it all down in my Avenza tablet. And you know, if I find anything, drop a point, and then we can look at the map later. So that's what the transects are. Obviously, when you're doing this, we have little things that get in the way, like big areas of wind blow, small pockets of wind blow, or very thick trees or steep water courses. And we can't always have these exact straight lines, but we try to work around them as best we can and cover all the area that we think might have any site constraints. In addition to doing the transects, if it's the bird breeding season, we'll have a look, and a special look, at any areas that we consider to be good raptor nesting habitat. So areas that are thinned, or perhaps there might be lower density species such as larch, where the birds can get in and make their nests. And we'll give them an extra thorough search just to ensure that there's nothing hiding away in there. And then once we've done all that and we've got it all kind of mapped out, and maybe we found nothing. I mean, there's not something lurking in every single compartment in the forest. But if we do have any site constraints or sensitivities, then what we tend to do is once we get back home, we consider what we've done and write it up on the standard form 146, which is pretty good because it has prompts in there and gives you some ideas as to what you should be looking for. So when you're writing it up, obviously you're going to think about what you found, and there's a lot of further information on QPulse. You know, we have guidance notes there, company guidance notes. So you could refer to them, and then you consider, well, can I deal with this myself, or do I need some extra help, you know? So, for example, if you found a badger set, you would know what to do, generally speaking, assuming it was a normal badger set, and you would deal with that yourself. On the other hand, if perhaps you discovered a Schedule 1 bird's nest, like a goshawk, for example, you might think to yourself, I can't really deal with this. I don't have the necessary license nor the experience. And in that case, you know, you would escalate at a level, and you would maybe contact your local eco lead or the company ecologist, or perhaps another local expert that knew a little bit more about the problem in hand. And by doing that, you'll eventually get yourself a sort of method of how you're going to go forward from that point, you know, a prescriptive part to the plan. And that's when everybody has to kind of adhere to the various buffers, etc., that might be implemented in order to protect these species, you know.
Brilliant. So a lot happens. This is a very important part, isn't it, of harvesting. It always happens and always takes place. These checks
Absolutely.
and measures before every single harvesting site, and every harvesting manager knows that this is the thing that happens before any works take place.
Absolutely. Obviously, you know, certain situations, it's always different. I mean, there are certain sites where there are not going to be any constraints or environmental sensitivities. And on the other hand, there can be other sites that are extremely complex and require a good deal of thought before we actually start along the route of harvesting and getting the felling plan up and operating.
Right. This also proves that there is wildlife in productive forests, because some people say that they're devoid of life and they're deserts and they don't have any wildlife in them. Is that true?
No, it's very true. There's a lot of wildlife in our forests. What you have to consider is that there is very little native woodland available for these animals, and our commercial forests are the closest thing that approximates to their natural habitat. Mm-hmm. It might not be perfect for them. It certainly isn't perfect for us on occasion, but these creatures are there and we have to take them into consideration when we're planning our operations.